Yep.
Hello and welcome to a special meeting of the Stow Select Board to discuss the Collings Foundation's next major event. In the room are myself, Megan Birch-McMichael, Courtney Fresha, and Hector Costanzos, and joining us virtually is Ingeborg Hageman-Clark. I believe that we have Rob, Collings, and Hunter from the Collings Foundation on, and so I would ask you all to just give us a brief overview of this. And for the board, just to let you know, we have received, because they're doing their event next week, or on the 8th and the 9th, normally this would have been on our agenda. And so I would respectfully ask the members of the Collings Foundation to make sure that we have at least 3 weeks notice in the future, just so that we can get it on a regular meeting agenda. But because we happen to be meeting, we were able to do this. And with that, I will turn it over to either Rob or Hunter.
So Hunter, you are, oh, there we go. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, hey.
Hi, and I think is Robert's iPhone?
Yes, I'm on.
Great, so whichever one of you would like to take it away, you can talk about your event.
Sure. I can do a little brief descriptive, and Hunter, feel free to jump in at any time if there's something I'm missing. This is pretty much the same World War II reenactment event that we have done since 2007. All the permits were filed, and I'll apologize for this confusion. We thought this was approved a long time ago because we filed the permits back with our last major event, the Revolutionary War reenactment, and they were approved with the state fire marshal and the town fire department at that time. Both were submitted at the same stage. But in any event, apologies for that. The fire department is aware of the event. They have a detail which will be out there as they've had at all the other events, a 2-man detail with truck to be part of that, the permit for the pyrotechnics. Hudson Police is providing the detail for the end of 568 Main Street for traffic going in and out. And the Stow Police Department's aware of it as well. I believe everything had been sent out to the Stow Independent a couple weeks ago with the press release and so forth. So nothing really new at all on the event. The difference would be we are going to have 2 aircraft that are flying that will not be flying from the field. They'll be stationed remotely and then just flying over the field during the course of the event. And Denise, you should have all the paperwork for the pilots and the aircraft for those.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions you want us to get into any detail of the event or anything along those lines?
Can I ask a question while they're thinking? Rob, did you decide, will the planes be coming from Minuteman or from Crow Island?
I believe it's from Minuteman.
Do you have any questions, Hector?
Nope.
Nope. Any, Courtney?
Think so.
Okay. And Ingeborg, did you have any questions for them? No? No. Okay. And no other questions?
No.
Okay. I think we can, I'll take a motion then.
Madam Chair, I move that all the necessary conditions and requirements have been met per the June 28th, 2017 and October 1st, 2021 settlement agreements for the Collings Foundation's major event, the Battle for the Airfield World War II reenactment, scheduled for Saturday, October 8th and Sunday, October 9th, 2022, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. on the Foundation's museum property. This includes permission for pyrotechnics to be used in the battle reenactment taking place between 11 and 11:45 a.m. and 3 to 3:45 p.m. both days, fulfilling Section 2, Part C regarding major events in the June 2017 settlement agreement between the Collings Foundation and the town of Stow, with the understanding that this is the second of 2 permitted pyrotechnic events for the year.
All right, we'll do a roll, any further discussion?
Yep, nope.
I'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Hageman Clark,
Aye.
Mr. Casandos,
Aye.
Ms. Russia,
Aye.
and chair votes aye, so that's unanimous. Have a great weekend.
Robert.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Have a good night.
Hang on a minute.
Can I ask you a quick aside question? Are you aware that there's a Young Eagles rally going on at Minuteman Saturday morning?
I don't, no, I'm not aware of that. Thank you for letting me know. I appreciate that. I was not told about that. The other thing I would say is Hunter has been working on event schedule for next year. So it probably would be beneficial for all of us if we provide that to you as soon as we know it, so we can get on itineraries and schedules much earlier in advance. And I appreciate you taking care of this tonight.
Thank you, and I think that would be great.
Yes,
Yeah.
actually, Rob, that's a great comment, because I've been talking to police and fire chiefs, and we would like to do with Collings, like we do with the apple orchards, and have the same plan for all of your events, because your staging is very similar, your time, your dates, things like that. So I think it'd be great in the off months if we could talk about your 2023 schedule and get a plan for the year for public safety. And then that's one less thing we have to do when your events come up.
Great idea. Sounds like a plan.
No problem. I'll have it to you in a couple weeks.
Sounds great. Thanks, Hunter.
All right, thank you all.
Good
and
night.
Thank you, you too. I will entertain a motion to go into recess.
Madam Chair, I move to go into recess.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, roll call vote, sorry. Ms. Hageman Clark?
Aye.
Aye.
Ms. Gresham?
Aye.
And chair votes aye, that's unanimous. We'll be going into a brief recess before our 7 o'clock joint boards meeting. Thank you. All right, welcome to the 7 o'clock PM joint board meeting of the Select Board, the Finance Committee, and the Capital Planning Committee to discuss the Stow Town Hall project. We are recording for broadcasting later, so just be aware that though we are not live, it is recording. If the members from the 3 boards are virtual, we just ask that you please use the raise hand function to speak and clearly identify yourself. Denise will be keeping an eye on that. Because this is a meeting of the 3 joint boards, I'm not going to entertain comments from the public tonight, as this is primarily serving as a brainstorming session for the 3 boards. So really, it's for us to discuss kind of the options that have been presented to us from the Stow Town Hall. I'm assuming they came from the Restoration Committee.
Yes.
And sort of just to start brainstorming what to do moving forward. So what I would ask is, first, anybody who's in the room, just kind of identify yourself, say your name, what committee you're from, so we all know each other, and I'm gonna start with this.
Steve Jolly, Capital Plan. Peter McManus, Capital Plan.
Missy Reed, Capital Planning. Denise Domkowski, Town Administrator.
Megan Bertram Michael, Select Board.
Gordon Krecha, Select Board.
Hector Constanzo, Select Board.
Erica Benedict, Finance Committee.
Okay, so it's virtual.
And so for those of you that are on one of these 3 boards, I have made you all co-hosts, so you're welcome to unmute yourself and introduce yourselves as well.
And Ellen's saying that she can't hear any of us except for me, so if we could enunciate in this room, the owl should be keeping up, but just talk as loud as you can.
So.
Yes.
Ed?
Ed DeLuca, Capital Planning.
Would you like me to?
Planning
call
Board,
Sam?
Hageman, Select Board.
Kevin?
Kevin Gross, Finance Committee.
Ellen?
Ellen Sturgis, Select Board.
Dave? Dave Arsenal, are you there? He's on. And Chris, finance?
Chris Buck, Finance Committee.
And I think that's everybody from a committee, one of these three committees. If I've missed you, please raise your hand.
All right. So, as I said, I think we wanted to convene the joint boards together to discuss sort of what the path forward is for the Stow Town Hall. First, I want to acknowledge the work that the Stow Town Hall Restoration Committee has done over the last few years. I sat on that committee for a year. Courtney was, how many years you were on it?
3.
Oh, yeah. So a lot of what we have seen in front of us, the 5 options, and also the kind of fundraising report that is there, are a product of that committee, their work. So I do want to acknowledge that. Having said that, I'm going to kind of open this up as a discussion from really anyone to weigh in on what they are seeing, what we all are seeing as a path forward for this. Obviously, we have everything from
Ellen.
okay. Ellen, yes,
And
then Ed. Ellen.
And I'm happy to let Ed go first. I just, since he's been on the committee, I'd love to hear his thoughts first.
Okay, thank you. Well, first, I just wanted to extend my appreciation for having this delayed. I had a meeting at the September date for this committee, and I appreciate that you were able to accommodate my schedule in that manner. I think that one of the issues that we faced was, in some sense, the problem of the town hall is over-constrained. And so the committee was charged with several things, and it never really fit in an appropriate box. So the charge was, one, that it was capital plan, it was CPC funding was supposed to be the funding source. There was not necessarily a requirement, but I think a strong desire to have this building, when it was renovated, to be not a fossil fuel building, so that it was a sustainable adventure. There was a requirement. Dave, your microphone is on. Awesome. Thank you. There was additional requirements in terms of how the building could be used and the circumstances there. And so we're in this position, in part, I think, because the constraints that were being imposed, together with the sort of shocking budget on what actually the renovation looks like it's going to cost, put us in a position that we didn't have a solution that fit. It didn't fit the CPC interests. It was a frightening number for them. It was there was no other source of funding that was within the committee's purview to approach. And so I think that's kind of why we're sitting here today and trying to come up with a different path. That was just my take on this, on how we got here.
Ellen?
Yeah, thank you, Ed. That actually is helpful to put this in context. I think, one of my concerns is that people assume that if we were voting against it, meant we didn't want to save it. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. It is an iconic key part of our history. Hearing those three things is like, right, that sort of clarifies, I mean, I hadn't even thought about the sustainable part, but it clearly, what I've been concerned about is that we just weren't clear on what the use is going to be. And when I read it, the 5 options, I mean, that's clearly fundamental to choosing an option is like, do we want it air conditioned or not? I mean, there's some easy, well, not easy, clear decision points that we have to decide on. So I guess that's where I've been hoping we would get to at this point is really, and I'm not saying I have at all the right way to get to this point, but I think we need to really agree on at what level do we want to keep the building? I mean, we want to keep the building, but for, for what purpose? And if it's a low use purpose, then it's a low use cost is sort of how I look at it. Basically in terms of that air conditioning sort of and second floor or the basement floor infrastructure. So that's where fundamentally where I'm at is yes, if there's the 3 constraints as Ed put it, we need to first decide on what we all agree should be the primary use of it, and then go to the next 2 issues about sustainability and funding.
Yeah.
And so I think the question of use has been a real showstopper. It feels to me, especially looking at the options that have been presented by the architect, that the option we choose will also dictate what uses will come in here. So if the building isn't very comfortable, or if it isn't, it doesn't have technology that we might want to use in our 21st century lives, then it will be less appealing and it won't get used for as many things. If it can't be improved because we can't afford it or choose not to.
Yeah, Courtney, I disagree completely. I think we have to decide what it is we want the building to be before we decide how much money it wants. And I think that's fundamentally been the problem, is we've got an 1850s building in a 21st century town that has a community center. What are we going to do with an iconic building that we like, but we don't really need, right? I mean, it'd be great to have the space for, I can think of several functions, but I was trying to think of, all right, well, what's this building best suited for? And I think we all agree that there's not an easy answer to that question. That's fundamentally why. Yeah, it costs a lot of money to renovate it. But I mean, we spent a lot of money to renovate Center School because we knew we needed a new school. Right. And we're not there. This building.
What can this building offer that, I mean, I love this building. I love this building. If I had the money, I'd do it. I mean, what can this space offer that the renovated combo community center, the other spaces in the town cannot at its maximum potential? Because that would partially drive the revenue, right?
Right.
If we could, right? So I think, we have to kind of start, start there.
No, I agree.
I think it offers a cultural context that Pompo doesn't. So I see this as a cultural center. I see it for a place. I mean, this has acoustics that Pompo doesn't. This has a dance floor that Pompo doesn't. It has a high ceiling that Pompo doesn't. It has natural light that Pompo doesn't. The stage isn't much to write home about, but Pompo doesn't have a stage. And this is a great space for a small gathering, for a talk, so maybe a lecture series. Okay. For small music presentations. Either a small concert series or there are a number of dance groups that use this building currently. I did hear recently from somebody who's thinking about running a community dance here, which would be something that would be open to all, and it would, that kind of dance is a small affair, but it's still community. So those, I mean, I think also this could house art exhibits, art and sculpture.
So would there be, so I'm thinking, I'm thinking about the last 20 years, I've been here 6 years, and how the athletic facilities in the town have developed. And part of that is because Laura Greenhow was kind of she it was her job, yes, but she brought the community in and kind of, so as a town, we've been able to really expand our athletic, right? So we had somebody who kind of took ownership of that, and Laura did it. So I think, and I love those ideas, and I think I think it's viable. I get excited over things like that too. But we would need a champion or somebody who would be managing this building and basically marketing, right? So who would that, like, because I don't think, short of that, I don't know how much we would succeed. I don't know. I mean,
No, I think it needs a champion in a variety of ways.
right, yeah. Yeah. Would it be a town committee? Would it be a volunteer? Would it be, I mean, I'm just thinking that that's part of what would drive this. I'm looking at you only because you're talking.
Ditto.
Nobody-
Yeah. I know. And I feel like there's a lot of quiet just because, oh, sorry, Hector.
That's okay.
Yep.
I hear a lot of questions about what we use this building for. What if we don't find a use? What's the option?
Right.
Doesn't like Dave sound tonight.
Sorry, and one quick kind of housekeeping note, the camera's having trouble. So I think every time people speak, we just need to quickly re-identify yourself.
Or really speak
Or just
loudly.
really speak loudly. So because the owl, the way that the owl works is that if you're speaking, it will kind of zoom to you, but if it can't hear you,
So people
really
on
not
Zoom
helpful.
are having
they're
trouble
having
figuring out
trouble
who's
figuring
actually
out who's
speaking.
talking.
I can do it remotely as well, so I'm gonna try, so I'm gonna move it as much as I can.
Okay. Yeah, I think,
So can anybody answer that question? This is Hector, by the way. Can anybody answer the question of what's the option if we don't find a use for the building?
I mean, we have the set of options on the table. You can continue to maintain this building as you have in the past. You could, I think, there was the option number one involves some painting, some, addressing some of the basic issues in the hall that you're all in. And, and operating it as it is now, right? I mean, we've always noted that the building is not in dire condition. It's not about to fall down. There are issues that have been identified that can be probably addressed through maintenance activities. I was a bit surprised that the architect felt that you could spend over the amount that requires to bring everything up to code by declaring it as essentially an extensive maintenance project. I didn't think that was permitted, but he knows obviously better than me. So given that that's on the table, yes, you could indefinitely, well, pretty much indefinitely maintain the building in its present state until you decide to do something else with it. That's certainly an option. You're not going to do that with CPC money. Just put that stake in the ground.
This is Courtney. I'd just like to add to what Ed just said. The distinction is if there is work that would require a building permit and would cost, currently it would be $158,000 or more. That is the threshold at which, with a building permit, then the building is required to come up to code in a variety of ways. And that's why the whole project was, brought in. That is the other reason that the Town Hall Restoration Committee was convened, was to assess what the building needs, or what it would cost to renovate it once you're required to bring it up to code. So bringing it to code means there's a bunch of accessibility stuff that has to happen. And with this architect, with the idea that we were going to fully renovate the building, he went to the Architectural Access Board and got certain waivers for accessibility based on the full renovation. And so this is described in the packet that you got. So without the full renovation, this distinction he makes is that if there's any code compliance that's required, we would have to return to the access board and ask for a waiver again. And they would likely, they might grant it on a time limited basis. So they might grant something for 3 years and then say, you got to bring it up to code.
Ellen?
So, two questions. Well, sort of the same question. And I think it was in option 3, it talks about sort of the 2 separate floors staying sort of somewhat independent. And I'm wondering if I understood that correctly. Like, I mean, I know that from what Courtney's told us outside of the packets, that there's, fundamental structural work that might need to be done in the basement. But if we weren't to use it in the basement, could we just focus on the first floor, and what would that do to accessibility? And then the second part of the question is around office. It was speculated that offices could be used for downstairs. And I guess that's a question for Denise, whether that would be a realistic place for office space at this point, from what you see the need is.
I think we could certainly use office space, just not in the condition, obviously, that it's in. We would have to renovate the basement in order to make use of it as office space. Chris.
Yep, Chris.
Thanks. I just wanted to clarify option 1 because I wasn't sure if I understood, and maybe I had missed this the first time around. Given the code compliance, if the expected cost for option 1 is 250,000 and that's above the threshold, is option 1 effectively not possible? Did I understand that correctly? If we had to spend 250,000, that would trigger code compliance, and therefore we would spend by necessity a lot more than 250,000.
I can answer that.
I don't know the answer.
So this is Courtney again. Our understanding from what our architect has put in this document for us is that if we are only making repairs to the building rather than, so that the distinction is that there are minimal things that one can do without having to essentially get a building permit. These days, it's pretty limited to painting, probably plaster repair. I'm not sure, you may be able to insulate. So for instance, I think there was talk about the wall behind the quilt needs enough repair that it needs to be torn down. And so while it was open, you could insulate that. And not the wall torn down, but the plaster. So you could insulate it. So it's very limited kinds of work that don't require a building permit. Building permits are governed, generally they're required for anything that has to do with the structure of the building.
Okay, and then because it's not permitted, it doesn't count towards the sum that would trigger a compliance requirement. Okay, thank you. Understood.
Erica.
So just going back to something that Hector mentioned about options, I appreciate that we're talking about the options the architect's given us, but I'm wondering if there's options for this building that we haven't discussed. You know, don't come for me, I'm not saying I want to do this, but can we sell the building? Could it be turned into a privately run restaurant space or something like that, that's still outside of the building looks the same, inside of the building is totally different, and it comes off the books for the town of Stow?
Ed, you raise your hand. Thank you, Erica.
Thank you. I was just going to jump back to Ellen's question. I'm not going to touch the selling the building question. It's above my pay grade. But I think, yes, you could separate the layers, the two building levels, and the implication is on the first. The implication for the first floor usage is that your maximum number of people that you can have in the building will be dictated by the restroom facilities on the first floor, which are not large for once you renovate them. So you will have lower capacity for the first floor if you don't include the second floor and allow yourself to expand the restroom facilities into the basement. That I think is the major problem. It may not be a substantive problem, but I think that was what the architect identified for us as the constraint that you're applying on the first floor by removing any usage of the bottom floor. And then of course your accessibility would have to be, all the accessibility bits would have to be functioning on the first floor. And if you did use the second floor independently, you'd have to have their own accessibility routes to the basement.
Thank you. I had a quick question. And it's something that I've never seen or thought to ask for, but if we're talking about what the building, like what the building is costing the town right now, what the heating and the cooling costs are per year, what the electrical costs are per year. And what I think that would be some information also that I would just like to know, because what are we putting into this building already? It's not that it's just standing here. Obviously the lights are on, obviously it's hot in here. So just sort of understanding, like you're not gonna renovate your house without understanding sort of what the extra costs are just in keeping it running. I don't know how we get that.
Well,
Or, I mean, obviously.
so we do have some estimates. The problem is we cannot winterize this building entirely because the water mains go through the basement. So we have to keep the heat running through the winter. The heat only is turned on when somebody is using it. If no one's here, the heat is off to the moment. I mean, it stays like 50 degrees, but we cannot just shut it down because of the pipes.
Okay.
The electrical use has been minimal. We are currently only utilizing the building Sundays and Thursday nights is when it's being rented. Both are dance crews. It's a Sunday dance crew, and then Thursday night is a dance troupe that likes to come in here. So we were considering shutting it down for the winter and not allowing any access, but when we looked at, and I can't remember off the top of my head, so I want to say it's the usage on a COVID winter that we didn't really have anything versus the previous year or even the current, it's minimal when we have things in here. So we decided for a Sunday and a Thursday, we can continue to rent it so that it is utilized and people are in here. But yes, we cannot just shut it down unless we come up with an alternative for the water.
Denise, do the rental costs cover the utilities?
They do not.
On a monthly basis.
Hector?
So I'm getting a little confused here. Number one, when we're referencing the first floor, I know the documentation says this is the first floor and the floor below is the ground floor. But some have been talking about just renovating the first floor, referencing the ground floor, which is not one of the options here. Option 2 is all about referencing everything from here up and leaving the ground floor untouched, basically. Am I getting that correct?
That's how I understood it. Ed or Courtney?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. And
There's
also,
no maintenance of the, no repairs to the basement in number 2.
that's what I saw.
It goes up by $1.6 million.
Option 2 will renovate the first floor for improved functionality, and here the first floor is this floor.
Yep.
And we'll leave the ground floor level unimproved and unoccupied.
Option
Does
2.
that mean on repair?
Yep.
Unimproved means
Means-
unfinished. So
It's untouched,
the
I think.
issues with, I was here for the end of the Luca tour, which I guess isn't gonna happen. Because I haven't been down there in a long time.
All the doors are unlocked, you can sort it out.
There's structural issues in the basement. That's kind of what's been forcing this all along. Is that right, Ed? If, maybe the water leakage has been fixed, but aren't there foundation issues and others down there that need addressing? Or has that the immediate emergency there been patched up?
So to my knowledge, nothing has been patched up in the basement. There's still the concerns that were there regarding the basement.
So I think if you read deeper into the conditions in
You
the
read the whole
options.
thing, but then I went back and said,
So-
okay.
So basically, if the basement is not going to be improved, then we will want to run a dehumidifier there to keep it from getting moldy and just poisoning the whole building.
So we do now, the dehumidifiers are running in the basement.
Yeah.
And my other question is, what about Erica's question about can't we sell the building? How can we look into that?
Select board.
I mean,
That's a discussion for you.
that is, that,
So I think this would be a really great place to get an opinion from more than just the boards and committees. I think if we want to talk about selling the building, we should ask the town. I think it should go to town meeting.
yeah, you, sorry, we just cannot hear anything.
People have to really speak up.
Yeah, can you have Hector repeat what he just said? I really didn't understand it.
My other question was Erica's suggestion about selling the building. How do we look into that?
And my response was, I think that is a place where we should ask the town, not just boards and committees, of their opinion. I don't feel comfortable making that decision off the town meeting floor.
This is Missy. I think you'd have to almost do a feasibility study on that because you convert this to a commercial space, parking becomes a huge issue.
And
I
water.
don't even think
And sewer.
it could be plausible, right? I mean,
Right.
I mean, you have to go firm, so.
Yeah.
So again, so right, so.
But I think that's a good thing to know too, because then you go
Right.
to town
Exactly.
meeting
Right.
and say, we looked into selling this building, it's not a viable option. And then it's like, okay, at least you looked into it.
Yeah, good point, right,
Yeah.
especially to present to the town.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it is a big ticket item. I mean, that doesn't look like the cheapest option is an option, and the other ones are all expensive. So it's just another pitch point for the town of, we can't get rid of this building. So
Right,
what are
so
we
what
doing?
are we gonna do with it? Right, Ellen?
So I'm intrigued by the idea that what can we do to the primary floor to make it more usable. And I used to rent spaces from a nonprofit that had a barn with no kitchen. And caterers are used to having no kitchen. So I'm wondering if I didn't see it, and I won't swear that I read every page of the 160 pages, whatever, but I was looking at floor plans and I was wondering if any point did they look at on, where the bathrooms are now on this floor, did they spec out the possibility of expanding bathrooms so we have more bathrooms on one floor?
Yes.
Because it seems like if that's the one constraint from what Ed said, it never seemed to make sense to me to move the bathrooms downstairs, because then it's a whole accessibility issue. So I'm just wondering if that was an option to get more bathrooms on this floor, because maybe I'm mixing up things, but I thought that one of the goals was to have a kitchen on the first floor, but maybe that was downstairs as well. Honestly, I don't remember.
I can say, and Ed or Courtney, because you all were on the committee longer than me, but I remember that was a long discussion that was had about bathrooms and moving bathrooms, and something had to do with the elevator, with an actual elevator being put in versus the lift to go to the stage. Like that a question, but can you refresh?
Sure. So,
Okay.
Well, actually, I think for clarity, maybe I'll refer again to the architect's proposal, because it's a document to go back to. So in option 4, he has, this wouldn't be, maybe not the entirety of option 4, because in option 4, there's a wheelchair lift to the lower level. But it does have the number of bathroom facilities needed to maximize the capacity of this hall. So basically what would happen in the L would be that you would have an entrance and a stairwell, and the rest of it would be restrooms that would house, it would be 3 stalls in the women's, 1 in the men's, and 1 additional one for handicap separately. And so basically the whole L would be stairs and that use, and that would maximize the occupancy for this space on 1 floor.
Right. Basically, the idea is it couldn't be used as a rental space for larger groups, because you have to have a certain number of bathrooms for the number of people, like there's the percentage, right? And so I think that was part of it too. It was in imagining that it was going to be used by more people. The bathrooms needed to sort of match up to that more than they are right now. And that's not statute. What am I trying to say? Like that, you have to have that in order to get a certificate of occupancy for that number of people, or like why is that such a big deal? Why can't we just have 1 bathroom, basically? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a fixture. Anything about painting, carpet is going to trip NAV in this building. Right. So we either go 250,000 or we jump well into the millions.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's.
Ed?
Yeah, I think we're heading in this direction anyway, but just to be clear, the options as described by the architect really should be viewed, I think, as, sort of a Chinese menu in a sense, right? So if you wanted to, not use the basement level at all, and as you say, maximize the use of the upper level, it's some subset of 4. And the question, but as you start moving away from option 1, the question of whether you start invoking the range of accessibility requirements and code compliance at all levels starts coming into play. And at that point, I think you do need to go back to someone who has a license to actually make those, whose professional reputation is behind their decisions. Right, so mixing and matching is okay from a conceptual point of view, but you have to, I mean, you can't then assume that you understand what the cost is gonna be or what the implications of those choices are.
What is, following up on that, Peter, what then is option two? That not mostly renovation of the main floor? So we can't really use that number to, not to stale, but to approximate what the work would need to be done on to get this first floor functional? Is that not option two? Ed, I'm assuming you're my expert here. I'm directing everything to you.
I think he's pulling it up.
Okay.
You're on mute, Ed.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I'm more of an expert when we have a document in front of me than I am when I don't have the document in front of me. So let me
All right.
imagine. But I think that when you're not, everything that's not option one, right, is going to come with this caveat that Courtney mentioned earlier of you're going to have, well, you're going to have some limited amount of duration in which to meet your full accessibility and code compliance. That's what I kind of gathered that he was, that was the issue with, moving forward, is that you then have, you start invoking these requirements for, is the electrical system up to grade? Is is everything up to grade? And if you have removed a room from your building, that's okay. The floor from your building, then those are not addressed, but you still have to do it in the other bits. So I'm not able to answer your question, Peter. I'm sorry.
Ingeborg?
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna have a very hard time articulating this because I was on the CPC when this was being discussed, and I know it was already raised, so I'm just going to give my thoughts. I don't necessarily need a response, but I felt I need to say it now, but I don't know if anyone will agree. So I'm going to think out loud that instead of looking at this building as something that we have to pick from a Chinese menu, I think, in my opinion, we need to decide whether this is a building we want to preserve and be part of our heritage. And I think that we probably all do, but we're sticker shocked with the amount of money. When we were on CPC, we also looked at bonding as an option. And I know there's negatives and positives associated with bonding, and I don't really want to get into a bonding discussion at this point. But I just sort of feel that the town has spent a lot of money on preserving its values with respect to open space, and it's had some trouble with affordable housing just because of the negative connotation and the votes we've had. But if we looked at this the other way around, like what can we afford, and then move forward instead of looking at it as what are the uses, to me, and I know everyone who said everything tonight has been, I don't disagree with anything that's been said, but I just thought there's another way to look at this is what can we afford over what kind of a mortgage? And I know you're absolutely right, Megan, about saying, if this was my house, I'd need to know what, what I'm designing to and what my uses are going to be. But I also agree with what Courtney said and some other people have said that there's a lot of potential. And so I guess my bottom line is if the town can't afford to maintain this building, then I really do think we should sell it or do something, because it's valuable to the town, and it shouldn't just, in my opinion, be maintained. So
That's all I wanted to say. It's not organized. It's not well said. I don't have any conclusionary statement, but I just feel this building, there's other ways to look at it than just pick from a Chinese menu. And I appreciate all the work that's been done so far. It was really great presentation.
Yeah.
So last year, when we were having these discussions, we ran some debt scenarios, and at a $4 million bond with 15-year payments, if we did a level debt, you're looking at about $320,000 a year, fiscal year. You know, granted, that was at a different interest rate than we are today, but that's probably the minimum it would be, and that's at a $4 million borrow.
And so that's something that's great. And I forgot you did that, Denise. So I guess that's the question. Is the town willing to take out that kind of money? And if not, then yeah, it's a really hard decision. And yeah, I don't have an answer.
Ellen.
Okay. Ellen? Oh, and then Hector, I see you off to the right. Yeah. Okay. Ellen?
So that's what Ingeborg said sort of takes me back to the to Erica's idea, but also I think it was Missy. Is that Missy on the other side of the room earlier? If we handed this over to a nonprofit organization, say, I mean, and not a town board, but say the Stow Historical Society, which I believe is a standalone. Not saying they want it. There's people on the call who probably will respond to that, but they have a different kind of opportunity to raise money for it. That maybe that's a better, I mean, I think that's an option as opposed to selling it. I don't, the selling it to a for-profit, partly because of the location and partly just because I can't imagine it would be very popular, is not really a direction I'd take our time on, but if there's a nonprofit who would be interested in, just becoming its own entity to protect the building and raise money for it. Framingham has had enormous success with their historic buildings because the Historic Society basically took them over and then raised money because there are dollars out there to raise it. So I'm wondering if that's another option to think about that would save the building without the town having to put the millions of dollars into it. Just a thought.
Hector?
Yeah, this is Hector. Sorry to say I'm further confused. One of the other things that was included in our packet was a Stow Town Hall fundraising proposal. I thought, not having been involved in these conversations in the past, I misunderstood and thought this was part of the plan. Is this just a proposal or part of the plan, or?
It's an option.
This is the file entitled Stow Town Hall Fundraising Thoughts. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep.
I had read that as a hypothetical roadmap towards a possible future, but not a thing that had been executed in any way. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, okay.
So is this something we would, after we restore the building, we would implement to try and recoup some of the funds, or do while we're trying to restore the building?
So I think this was another funding mechanism to help pay for the restoration, is what could we do to defray the cost to the taxpayer? And these were some of the options. And then yes, after it, obviously it's tours of the building and things like that. So there are plans that could go into effect after the building was renovated, but this was to get us to that point.
And have any studies been done about what the feasibility is of renting this as an entertainment place for plays and music events, things like that? Is it possible, or is that something that, like Ellen suggested, the historical commission would take over?
I think the hardest thing to think about with this building is that in the condition it's in right now, no one wants to rent it for whatever. So it would either be like, we have to sink a bunch of money into it, and Field of Dreams it, and if we build it, then we're gonna get a ton of people coming in who are gonna wanna rent it, which I don't think is the fiscally responsible way to do it unless we really have a plan. And so that's tricky, right? It's hard to say like who would wanna come in and use it, because nobody's gonna wanna come in except for the smaller groups that are using it right now. So I think that's the fundamental question that I have wrestled with on the committee, and every time I look at this building is like, I think like 2 hands just went up at the same time.
So Ed's hand has been up.
Okay, Ed. Okay, so Ed.
Hi, thank you. So just, I'm sorry, to get back to Pete's question, I did find that on page 9 of the Stow 5 options document, it talks about accessibility features. And it says, in the second sentence, it is probable that the MAAB will make the building subject to a time variance of relatively short duration, 3 years, to provide temporary relief from meeting current accessibility regulations. In lieu of issuing the time variance, they may require making the stage wheelchair accessible, adding assistive listening systems, upgrading the fire alarm system, and providing ADA signage, ... None of which is currently estimated budget in the currently estimated budget for this option. So in essence, the option 2 as described in this document is not a long-term, you're spending this money and then you're good for 20 years or 50 years. It's not, it's an option that by construction is going to incur future costs, which have to then be estimated if you wanted to realize that option.
Thank you. Chris.
The sort of Field of Dreams analogy had occurred to me as well, right? And one of the things that helps answer the question, perhaps, of will they come if we build it is, Ellen had mentioned, I think it was Framingham, that it had some success with their historic buildings. Last year, I went to a film screening in a historic building in Andover in which they had renovated and put in a really nice theater. And I was curious what level of benchmarking of some similar efforts of the surrounding town, so we could have a pretty good idea that if we were to do the renovation, then we would likely be looking at a certain level of use or occupancy or whatever. Because I think there have been some really good hypothetical examples. It's not entirely clear to me whether they would come to fruition, a year or 2 years from now when this project is complete, just because I don't know what the experience of the surrounding towns has been when they've undertaken similar projects.
Hi, it's Missy. So following up on what you're saying, Chris, I think, I know the committee is, I know the committee's done a lot of work and everybody's done a lot of work, but we need to understand what the revenue stream to pay. I mean, we can't go to the town. It's either got to come through debt or it's got to come through philanthropy. We're not going to get, and I don't think a $6 million number is good at this point. I think it's well north of that, given what's going on. So I think there's some, we have to do some kind of, even if it's a back of the envelope revenue modeling for, let's assume Field of Dreams situation, right? What kind of revenue, and I don't know, like these Ellen and Chris, these historical societies you've been to, like these buildings they go to, like what do they charge? Like what's the revenue?
And that's exactly my question is, for example, I don't know if Andover brings in $10,000 a year or $1 million a year. I have no idea.
I mean, if we assume, we may need to, if we could, if the revenue could be, I don't know, 30 grand a year, would that cover the debt, right? And I was, like we could pay this off in 15 years. I'm just saying we need some kind of financial modeling. But I don't know if anybody's done that. I'm new to this whole thing. And maybe there have been other towns that have taken the same maybe we could ask other people in other communities around here to say, hey, have you ever done this? And what kind of revenue streams did you agree with? You know?
Peter?
Well, to follow on that, one, we have real numbers from Pompo now for a few years. So for those, we voted tonight that the 2 nights this is rented doesn't even cover the costs there. So I think you can project out that more nights aren't gonna cover it either. I know I've been out of this for a few years, really looking at the numbers, but this was discussed when Pompo was going on. I'd get to see a revenue stream develop from wherever renting out space like this. So I don't know that we're gonna end up a lot more than zero on the rental. But building was tighter, maybe heat wouldn't cost as much. So can I did a follow up on the overall finance of this?
Do you want to?
Sure. I mean, get back to the basic question, are we going to save the building or not? I'm only for saving the building. My opposition is it's been not just a sticker shock, but the mechanism of the funding. I really think it was fair to me not CPC as hard as they were. And put a lot of pressure on the bonding issue, which is something we've never done. So if we're going to get beyond, well, sticking with CPC, they either grow for another 10 plus years or not. So it's one part of that question for me. Am I going to say that there's not other projects going to come up 7-8 years from now that might need that money? So that's part of it. So if we are going to get beyond CPC in the funding, what form is that going to take? For some reason we can't bring it to town meeting forward, if that's only because it's not going to pass. I think that's one answer. But if there's some combination, if we're looking at, so now we have a $1.8 million option that's not really complete. Just pick the number, say 3 million. You got $1 million from the town, $1 million from CPC, $1 million from somewhere else. CPC can cover that in 2 years, refill their coffers. I think they should be proud that the coffers are empty. The deal with Stow Acres is exactly what it's doing. As is the saving a building like this. It's supposed to, but so I think we do kind of have to look at the cost up front. So if it's only CPC and fundraising are our only options, then most of these options are off the table. But if we could, come up with some kind of hybrid, I think CPC could afford, say half of the number, without really putting themselves in a hole. We could come to the town, borrow $1 million. It's not going to, hurt us. So I think we do have to kind of know what the possibilities are. And I'm willing to listen to someone if they have a model of rental stream that's going to add up to something significant. But I sure haven't seen that. But part of that answer is what's going on. We know what those rental rates are, what the costs are. So those are my main thoughts. I want to save the building. 5 million and rising. Certainly we can't cover it CPA funds, but maybe a nice option for upstairs here. I'm not convinced at all we need more space. We need a building that's solid in the foundation, but I don't think we need more space for meetings. So there's a middle option. Very nice up here. Still get whatever rental stream is there, and maybe have a positive outcome in town before for some of the funds and take the pressure off. That's kind of how I'm looking at it. I don't personally see how we get to the whole thing Certainly not a CPA compliance. And just to follow up on the bonding, so that would be 15 years at, call it 350, last year's revenue, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, was around 600,000 that we could bond against. It's over $1 million, so I think $1 million is probably a fair number going forward. Not this year, that was a big year last year, but we're going towards it. I mean, the assessments are up. So, yeah, we could have $500,000 left over each year, but I'm personally uncomfortable with tying that much money in 15 years at this point. But some hybrid from that, something on town meeting floor, I think could get us to a good option for the town. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Certainly in favor of saving the building, but not in favor of putting that much pressure on CPA. I think with the right combination, we could have support on it.
Denise.
I just wanted to comment on the revenue potential. We could certainly inquire from surrounding towns on what buildings similar to this are generating. A couple of things though here, we have no parking. So really the building potential is limited to weekends because nights and during the day, we don't have the availability of even nearby parking lots. I think also with the addition of Pompo, we have groups that were using this actively that have left and would not come back here because they have the functionality, they have a kitchen, they have more bathrooms, they have accessibility. So the groups that have left that are at Pompo are very comfortable there now. So I don't know that we would attract them coming back. To me, this is more of it's a niche use. It's the dance classes. It's maybe someone wanting to have a small baby shower or something that has, a handful of cars and, a Sunday afternoon that you don't need a kitchen. And to me, I think it's limited to the possibilities of rental. But we can certainly get some inquiries from surrounding towns and see what kind of money they're making and how they market it. I know the building that Chris is referring to in Andover. I would have to assume that they make a lot because it's a very active building with active rentals. I just don't know that we have that capability here, given the location, the parking, and quite frankly, the accessibility.
So obviously, we're not coming out of this with an answer tonight. That was never the intention of this. It's important to just get, to really just have some real honest conversations about this building. I think it's hard, and I'm happy that we are all talking about this now. As far as next steps, Dave, did you unmute?
You unmuted. Do you want to say anything?
Well, I totally agree with what Denise just said. I mean, there's no, it's for the rentals and this and that, there's no parking. Pompo is the better choice. That's not fully rented all the time either. And the accessibility is pretty narrow. I remember not too long ago, somebody's wife was walking across the street from the parking lot, got run over and killed. So, I mean, there's dangers to that area right there. It's an old building. People have feelings. People want to keep it. Have you checked interest rates lately? I mean, you're going to go buy, you're going to spend money. The payback is big. I don't know. It's a tough situation, but my personal opinion, I wouldn't sink too much money into it. But if you wanted to add another bathroom or expand the bathroom that's there, and so you have the ratios for a full capacity. But I mean, people aren't renting places like that anymore. Other towns have done their thing, but they're in a different location. There's parking. There's this. I mean, there's other things.
You know, it's unfortunate. It was great in its day, but you know, it just right now is not. Never is a good time. But what Denise said about the parking and the rentals and all that, that's what needs to be thought over before. You know, so that's my thoughts anyway.
Thanks, Dave. Ed, you raise your hand again?
Yes, thank you. I think one thing we might consider doing is thinking about the use of this building in the context of the upcoming plan for how we're going to change the center of town traffic and things like that. Because if you take the old fire station and create commuter parking there, you also then have reasonably accessible parking across Crescent Street, which is going to be a less dangerous road to traverse. And then, you know, you might open up possibilities that currently are not available. So it might be worth considering thinking about the use of this building over a 5-year period, while we're also thinking about how the center of town is going to be restructured traffic and pedestrian and bike wise. And maybe there's a match that comes out of that, that thought process.
No, sorry. Steve.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
back when that was the go-to place.
glad Ed mentioned, you know, the sort of longer term plan of the town center. Obviously, we have parking issues at the library, we have parking issues here. We have a building that we don't really use. I could easily envision 10 years from now, the town center looking entirely different, finding a way, not entirely different, but different than it does now, and finding a way to integrate what this building could potentially be makes more sense to me than pumping a bunch of money into it right now for a use that we're not really clear, right? So I agree that we all, you know, we like our open space, we like the historic character of the town. The building is certainly iconic from that perspective. And I would love to be able to say, hey, look, you know, I looked under the mattress and we've got an extra $5 million to sort of fix it. That isn't going to happen. And until we establish what the vision of the, you know, the town center and the building are actually going to be, I don't like spending money. And I don't think town meeting likes spending money on it for something for which there is not a clear vision.
And I think what we've said before this evening too, is the building is not falling down at the moment. Like there's not, it is certainly not in its most pristine condition. But it's not like we're, I don't know, well, it's not like there's an emergent situation right now. And so, you know, the option of just sort of maintaining the building, I think even, I mean, the options that are, it's, as I see it, the options presented to us right now from the architect, one of them is not just keeping it status quo as it is. Obviously, he's not presented us with an option to just keep the building running. And I think there's something to be said for that being a real option as well. In the interim, as we are looking forward to seeing what's going to be happening in town center with the library, with all the things, and I don't know, I think there's something to be said about just sort of sitting tight for now.
I have one more point.
Yes.
Which Megan, you remember that. I also don't like the option of just sitting. You know, capital planning is all about planning. I think if we're buying ourselves time to decide what's best to do with the building, we should actively work towards deciding what's best to do for the building. So in terms of next steps, I don't see it as the next steps of what do we do with the building, but how do we integrate what the building is going to be, you know, used for 20 years from now with what the rest of the town center is going to be doing in 20 years. And that's takes work.
Yep. Courtney.
Yep.
I would first of all say that the just sitting option is option one.
You think?
Or
Okay.
the not doing much is option one, which is that there are things to be done in this building to maintain.
Okay.
And I didn't read the cost analysis of why it would cost $250,000. I would like to, I mean, this night may not be the forum, but I would like to, part of this, I think, is thinking about what do, you know, does the Town Hall Restoration Committee continue with a new charge? Is there another committee that could be formed differently, or you know, who is going to lead the charge on finding out if this building, you know, for the town center 20 years from now. And I just want to thank Peter for his comments about his thoughts on hybrid approach to financing it, because whatever we choose and whatever makes sense, I see that as a good way to go about it. I don't ask C to fund the whole thing. He's going to work for this town at this time or foreseeable short term.
Okay. Denise?
I mean, I would suggest sort of the next steps to be really undertake a larger sense of the community by way of an insert in the tax bill, an insert in the census, something that can actually go out to every resident, every homeowner, and you know, have this group put together even 5 questions about this building and ask folks, you know, send it back with your bill or drop it off or drop it in our mail, anything that gets a larger sense. Because I think the survey that was done, less than 100 responses. I think even, you know, this discussion should fold into the larger master plan discussion with the comprehensive plan with the planning department and the planning board. But I think we can do the first step of just focusing on this building and getting some more feedback. You know, going to town meeting is great, but 200 people show up at town meeting. And I don't know that we want to do a non-binding ballot question or something like that. I think trying to do a survey, again, a very short survey about what the residents would like to see and if they would support maintaining and restoring this on a larger scale that gives us some direction. Because we've talked about doing some of that, but we haven't actually done it. We haven't put something out townwide.
Yep.
I thought the survey we did was townwide before.
But it didn't, it was just a survey monkey on the website, just whoever clicked on it. I think actually mailing something to every household. And if they choose not to respond, at least we've said we've sent something to every household. People have an opportunity to weigh in on it.
If I could, one of the things that I learned in the cycle of requests to the Community Preservation Committee this past year, as I watched the presentations that the library made, I saw how different the presentations that the Town Hall Restoration Committee made and the library made. And I thought about the times that I've felt very engaged in a public process. So in thinking about how something could change or be different. So there was years ago a study in Gleasondale, and then library, the work that they had for Gleasondale, and I think one other event that I can't remember at the moment, where participants in person were asked to vote with colored stickers for things for uses that they were excited about. And so it was all very positive. And when we put out the survey that people clicked on, and there were some wonderful positive comments, and there was also a lot of other conversation that I was kind of along the lines of what are we going to use this building for? It was anxiety about price. It was anxiety about options. And so what I like is that if a group does some work to present something, so to visualize or to imagine and then make a presentation of something compelling for the space and looks for buy-in in the community, then you get a very different result than if you say, what do you think about the town hall? So I don't know who that group is, and I don't know how to engage them, or if we will engage them, but I think we get a very different result. And so we may still continue to get an ambivalent result if we just say, what do you think? Whereas if we say, how about this, exciting project, would you buy into that?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have examples of times in town when we've approached the town residents and asked them what they thought. Library did a great job. We did a great job. I'm going to shudder and think it's 10, 15 years ago now with respect to center school. We asked the town what their vision for center school was. And look what we got. So it can be done.
Tying together.
50 years.
Yes.
It's missing. I'm tying together what was just talked about. And I think that if the longer plan, I gotta tell you, if somebody said to me, in 10 years, we could have a functioning, I don't want to call it a strip mall, that's, a functioning, vibrant community there, I would say we could absolutely extend the town community to this building. This would be the end of it. It would go from here to, the cemetery, right? I mean, that would be the downtown Stow. And I just, so looking at what are the plans? What can we do? I hadn't even thought about what we're gonna do with the old fire station, right?
We're not capital planning.
You're
thinking about turning it into a Dunkin' Donuts.
No.
With the trash room.
No. I'm so glad you didn't interview me for reasons I'll tell you another time. But, I'd rather tear that building down than tear this building down. But just I think a lot of people, I think that would get the community, 7,000 people in town excited. You would get more response. You would get the people that are struggling to raise kids and work and all that stuff more active, because everybody wants it. I mean, I talk to people across town. Everybody wants that. So why don't we make that happen? So I think what you're saying is that this longer term plan and how we how and when we start trying to get kind of support from the community. No, I haven't been on public planning, but
You got time.
hopefully it's fresh blood, fresh statements.
Hector.
So if I understand all the comments that I've heard. It's almost like we're saying that it doesn't seem to be that much interest in the town about town hall. But there might be some interest about town hall if we incorporate it into a larger plan about downtown Stow and things like that, which are going to take, I don't know how many years. So the best thing we can actually plan for this building is to keep it running, keep it safe, until we figure out how to incorporate it into a bigger center of Stow plan. Which almost sounds like option one or some hybrid of option one, but not quite option two.
Yeah, I mean, we're sitting in a 174-year-old building. It's not falling down around us. I think we could, you know, responsibly plan for the next 50 years.
Giving everyone their last opportunity to say anything else. Does anyone have any final comments for this evening? Keeping in mind that this meeting was really just meant to be kind of a beginning meeting of the minds, so that we can thoughtfully start thinking about options moving forward. Anyone else? No? I think I will take a motion to, nope, I will not.
Are there next steps?
Oh, well,
Are we reconvening at some point?
It's nice to see it there.
I think.
Or are we just gonna maintain the status quo?
Because, okay, so my question about this option one, and someone else is going to have to answer this, is if option one is something that Courtney, you're saying is that we essentially would have to do because there are some updates that need to be made, where does that money come from? Like, we're saying that's not, I mean, it's a town building. So the town is paying to maintain the building, but like, does the town, do we need to spend $250,000? Like, I think that's my bigger question. Because what I was saying is, we just keep paying the bills and doing the things that we need to do to keep the building from not falling down. But I feel like that's not what you were saying, Courtney, and maybe Ed, you can speak to that as well, or Denise, you could speak to it as if someone wants to speak to it. I don't have the answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think if some version of option one is what we decide to move forward with at this time, you know, it would require a capital request. And then the funding would be, you know, fairly, I mean, if we're talking 250,000, maybe 300,000, I mean, that's something we could bond within the levy limit, budget for it, but, you know, with the understanding that if this is a priority from all boards, then this is gonna be a priority that everybody's gonna have to support while we go through the process. I mean, so if this is it, a capital request can go in, we can talk about that, present it to town meeting, and I can fund it within the budget. Possibly with the debt scenario and spreading it out over 5 years. I mean, that would be an option.
Okay.
But once we start getting up to, you know, higher than that, then there's gonna have to be a larger discussion because it's gonna have to offset something. Because we don't have, you know, while we're lucky enough to have a lot of capacity in our levy limit, it's not fair, and we've talked about this, it's not fair to just raise taxes because we have the capacity. Something like that that's gonna impact the tax rate, in my opinion, should go out to the taxpayers. And while we have, like I said, while we have the ability to just raise them because we're within the limit, I don't think that's fair. So I think if it's something that we can do feasibly, you know, even under, you know, I don't know, 400,000, we could probably spread out 5 or 10 year bonds and do it safely within the budget. But, you know, anything more than that's gonna take some type of hybrid or some larger discussion or some other commitment or some other funding source. And Ed has raised.
Yes, Ed.
Yeah, and I would say that option one is the option in which you can, you know, piecemeal it, right? by construction, it's almost a piecemeal thing. So you don't, the time frame over which you're spending whatever money you just choose to spend on option one or required to spend on option one, it does not have to be a single budget year, right? So it is, there's flexibility there that perhaps is not indicated, I think, in the document.
Steve.
So two things.
Yep.
And I really do think we're talking about two things. One is, do we need to spend money now? And the other piece, the follow-up piece, is how do we go about starting the process of planning for what the building is going to look like and who's going to be responsible for it? Regrettably, I think that's a select board decision. Like, is it the same committee, or is it a hybrid committee that involves thinking about the rest of the buildings in town? Is there a tie to the master plan development, type thing? I would recommend that we undertake both pieces of this without waiting anything. So there needs to be a decision about whether we're going to need to spend $150,000, $250,000 over the next couple of years, along with a decision about how to plan for the future of not just this building. I've been saying this for 2 years now. Every one of our kind of quasi surplus buildings. So, and it's a select board decision.
I mean, you do have 3 of those buildings in this area, right? We've got this one, we've got the old fire station, and you've got that, whatever it's called down on Crescent Street, the big white thing that has a school bus parked next to the cemetery, right? I mean, none of those buildings is being used for the purpose in which it was built.
So the old highway barn on Crescent Street has been, the Affordable Housing Trust has made a bid for that parcel. And the process there is to clear out the building in order that it could then be ultimately demolished by some party if the town completes the circle and puts that parcel in the purview of the housing trust. So that's one off the list of the 3.
Well, but how does that then also fit into the town center future planning, right? I mean, so I think the decision in which you're circling that also needs to be included into, and then what does that mean in terms of the use of the other buildings? Does that make a demand for additional parking someplace else? Does that make a demand for something else someplace else? Right? I don't know, but
Jace.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was gonna talk about the buildings. So we have not surplus the former highway garage because there still is potential to need storage for highway equipment if we are looking to renovate the current highway garage. So highway has asked not to surplus that while we go through this planning phase to figure out what is the right location for highway in a future public works with cemetery incorporated. On that note, we are in the process of moving the cemetery office from the former fire station into the highway barn. And we will actually shut that building down come the winter because we have been running it with one person who now falls under the highway department as far as employment, and his union is in the highway. He's part of the highway union. So we are moving that position. That building should be empty, I think, in the next few weeks. Again, that being said, it's still being used for equipment and storage as we're limited on space. To the overall vision of the center, I think it's a great concept, but even with the structures that we have, we're limited. We've talked about this with the library. It's an envelope of space. You can't really extend anything. We could certainly potentially knock down the former fire station to make a parking area. but it's not like we're gonna sell that for a commercial or a business or, so we are still limited. There is some planning funds coming down for a redesign of the center. It's more to make it more pedestrian friendly, to add actual crosswalks at the lights, add some sidewalks and accessibility for students. Other than that, because the way the properties really sit right on the street, we're very limited in what else can be done in this general area. So it will all be looked at as part of the master plan, as part of the center redesign. And we can add this building when we're looking at that. But I would just say there's not a whole lot that can happen in this space. This general vicinity of town.
It's better to plan than ignore.
Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out what we want the takeaway for this evening to be. And I don't know that I was coming into the meeting kind of wanting to take a vote on something or really, and I don't know. And I guess I kind of want to straw poll everyone to see where you all are at, so. See.
I don't want to spend any more money than option one right now. I would like to see a more proactive vision about what the building could look like, what we would use it for. I'm intrigued by the idea of finding out what other towns have, been able to do with their historic buildings. What steps we might sort of explore in that direction. So those are the three things that I would suggest. Oh, we want to preserve the building.
Peter.
Yeah, well, I would agree that not going beyond option one here at the moment. In favor of that. Very much like to see, what the overall vision is or reality as it develops. That's to the extent we can steer it, or it just happens, it will look different a few years from now, 5 years. Maybe not right here, but below the village. So I think the committee that came up with all this did a tremendous job of gathering information, presenting us with the options. So I don't think we need to go over any of that again. So what they don't want to see is another committee formed right now. Get some momentum. Next thing you know, we're getting proposals into a haunted place environment and all of that. Let's let that go by. Let's see what, who blinks first down in the old village. Along with what, looks like more work here. So, but I'd be in favor of, and then to answer your question, there's about 100,000 in paint and finishing here.
Mhm.
So I think that would, polish it up nicely. So we could do something along those lines, but if we can't answer the question, what are we going to use it for? Let's wait on and, as that develops, because the town is growing. I think we will need the space eventually. But we don't know what for at the moment. We don't know what the neighborhood's gonna look like 10 years from now.
Thanks.
I agree with both what you all said. The one thing that I would say, one of the benefits that we have from the work that's been done by the committee so far is at least we have an idea. We have a range, right? We know that the current dollars, we're looking at current dollars today, maybe 4 months ago, we're looking at a $5 or $6 million nut. So we have a general feel, and I think that that's beneficial. It's good to know, and to help with everything that we're kind of talking about. But I would agree that we just need to. I would just agree with what this guy said about this.
Courtney?
I agree that at the moment it feels like the the appropriate thing to do is to sit with option one or as needed repairs in the building. I think it's an important building to preserve. I like what has been said about context, about hybrid funding. My current feeling is that there's so much work to be done to develop an understanding of what is possible, how it would go forward, who would be interested, and how it would be funded. And so there's potentially years of work for, I'd love to see some individuals that are not part of town boards and committees step forward and get excited about the building if they are. So that's it in a nutshell.
I also agree with what Steve said, with those three options, but would add that I think it's worthwhile being able to present the option of what would it take to sell, is it sellable? And add that as another option to be discussed.
Yeah, I agree with everybody. I don't really have anything additional to add. I agree with Hector, though. I do think if we are going to go to town meeting at some point, we should just say to people, hey, we looked into this option and it's not viable, or it is, just so that they know that we dotted all the i's and crossed all the t's.
Okay.
Ellen,
with us, thank you.
Ellen.
I don't really have anything further to add. I think it does seem like the next step isn't necessarily the current committee, just because it's been so focused on building, but I don't know how to create another. I mean, really, I think someone said at the very beginning, we need someone to be a cheerleader for the project to do some of the groundwork, and I don't know who that is.
Ingeborg.
Hi, I completely agree, and I hope that we can take action on Denise's suggestion that the town get fully involved, or the town be aware of these discussions, and that we get a sense of that. I think that would inform us as the select board and finance committee and capital planning to really understand who we're working for. So I think that's the best thing to do right now, and I guess that's all I'll say at this time.
Okay, Ed.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think I don't have any further insights. I think we're not in a position to move forward on a substantive option that actually upgrades the building capacity or the building functionality. And so, we're not ready to make that decision. We don't have the fiscal mechanisms to make that decision feasible. So, holding the ground and trying to understand what it's going to take going forward. I think we do need, and I can't, this is not me at all, but we do need, some non-governmental entity to have an interest in this building as a, Friends of Town Hall or some such like organization, because without that kind of external advocacy, I don't see that you're going to generate either, the non-town funding or a level of interest at town meeting to bring this project forward.
Chris.
I thought that many people had well said comments, and I have nothing additional to add.
Kevin.
Not a lot to add. I think that indeed getting use Elm's word, a cheerleader or a group of cheerleaders is terribly important. And I think we should also not underplay the importance of getting a clear, commitment's too strong a word, but clear interest in future uses for the building to drive everything going forward.
That's everyone from the committees.
Okay.
Dave Arson.
Oh,
Bill
Dave.
left, he's gone
Oh.
off the call.
Okay. Okay, so I think next steps are that the select board will be putting a discussion item on a future agenda to talk about sort of next steps moving forward. So with that, no one has anything else to add.
Sorry, just a quick technical question. Is the select board minuting this meeting so I don't have to do it for the capital planning?
We can, because it'll just be a discussion. We don't. So I'll do it for finance, even though I gave it a form too. I'll do it for the three.
Thank you.
All right, well, if there's no further discussion, I will take a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Ellen?
Aye.
Says aye. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.